Table Topics
Yay!
Master.
Yay! Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Ladies and gentlemen, you're Toastmaster. You're allowed to do whatever you like. The theme for today's meeting is crack a joke. And the theme for today's topic session, the table topics, will be related around jokes and joking and such things. Now, those of you who follow me on Facebook will know that I have been doing a dad joke every day for December, or for Dadcember, as I have called it. I did one every day during July, or Jokelie, and I'm not going to do those all again for you because that would be cruel, since many of them are really bad. But what I do want to do is ask you to think about humour. What makes something humorous? What makes something not humorous? What sort of jokes do you like? What sort of jokes do you really not like? And we're going to discuss humour, and we're going to think along those lines. Now, I note that Nadia is not on the agenda. So, Nadia, if you'd like to bring yourself forward, I'm going to ask you, what sort of humour works well for you? What do you like in terms of humour and jokes? A particular artist or a particular style? And so for a period of 1 to 2 minutes, if you can discuss what tickles your funny bone, Nadia Gilks.
Personally, I have a dry wit sense of humor. So I find humor in things that possibly aren't supposed to be funny, or possibly things that are only funny because they're not happening to me. Not that I laugh at other people's pain or anything like that. I'm extremely compassionate. So, of course, if something seemingly tragic has happened, I will make sure that the person is okay first before I crack a joke about it or laugh about it. But things that probably shouldn't be funny will be funny to me. I think some examples would be, there was this movie, I think it's called Death at a Funeral or something like that. The original is based in London, and I think the original is much funnier than the remake that was done a few years ago. But it's just kind of one of those things where this person has something is wrong with him, and he's given what he thinks is like a pain medicine, and it ends up being like a Prozac or something, and he has like this awful reaction to it, and he's pretty much drugged up during this funeral where he's trying to impress his girlfriend's family, etc. And it goes really bad. And in real life, bad things happening at a funeral, like the casket falling over or making fun of mom and dad, would not go over very well. But to me, I thought this was absolutely hilarious. This movie was given to a friend of mine, and I loved it. I was practically on the floor laughing at it, and he was looking at me like, "You're crazy. Take the DVD and you go home." So, yes, those kind of dry wit, sometimes sarcastic, off the cuff humor, that's kind of my favorite, because that's my personal style, and that's what gets me laughing at movies or in real life. Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Nadia. Thank you very much. I think that Alan Tiddick had his finest moment as a drugged up boyfriend naked on the roof, and nobody else could quite understand what was happening. But if you haven't seen the movie, check out Death at a Funeral. It's actually hilarious, or not, depending on your sense of humour. On that subject, by the way, Robert Heinlein, in his classic science fiction novel, Stranger in a Strange Land, said, "I found out why people laugh. They laugh because it hurts, because it's the only thing that'll make it stop hurting. But find me something that makes you laugh, a joke, anything, something that gave you a belly laugh, not a smile, then we'll see there isn't wrongness somewhere, and whether you would laugh if the wrongness isn't there." So yes, sometimes that dark sense of humour is all that we have. But sometimes it's about something lighter. Sometimes it's about life. Julie, you've been a stand-up comedian. What, above all else, works for you when you are on stage and trying to get a laugh from an audience?
The best thing that works for me is unexpected third in the list. You put one thing, second thing, and then the third is very deep, very personal, laughing of myself. For example, I always was very proud and happy I was not a man, because women don't have to shave every day, regularly on the face. True? Well, until you get 50. And then I tried everything, taking out the hair from my, going to the doctor, asking for pills, didn't work. Cosmetician waxed me, it go back, and it was very expensive. And finally, I found what to do. I photoshopped it out.
Thank you, Julie.
That is an example of what works. And I have some other examples which are more spicy. And more spicy, better they work in comedy club, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Madam Comedienne. Yes, spicy humour in nightclubs where people are expecting spicy humour, sometimes a little better than in a Toastmasters meeting. We had a young, or at least inexperienced member who didn't quite understand where the line was, and he didn't just step across that line, he obliterated it in a speech, which was, I mean, very funny, but not entirely appropriate. Talking of humour that you're not expecting, the theme of today's meeting is crack a joke, which made me think of the word crack. Now, we heard references earlier to crack being drugs and all sorts of other things, but crack is also an Irish word meaning good times. It's spelt differently, C-R-A-I-C. And, you know, the Irish talk about, you know, going out for the crack, having a really good time. Jeannie, tell me about a time when you've been traveling and you found yourself with a group of people who are just going out and having a good time, and you've just decided, I'm going to go with this and share in this joy. So tell me about a time when you've been traveling and you've got a chance to share with a local group in the joy of their lives.
Well, honestly, Graham, I can't think of a single time when that's happened to me. I have had a very boring life. I come over to New Zealand, I got married, and I've lived not quite happily ever after, but I lived. And all my traveling seems to be going to see my parents in Australia. So in amongst that, you know, backwards and forwards, I very rarely actually mix with people who are out on the crack, which would be really nice. I would absolutely love to. In fact, the best times I have had, especially in the last few years, is when I come to Toastmasters meetings, whether they're in the room or whether they're here. Our Toastmaster meeting last Tuesday, we didn't know what we were going to do until we got there. And our president this year is a lady named Tony Sharp, who a few people know, who has been totally blind since she was 13, and I have known her since she was 5. And her idea of a crack was to give us little cards written in Braille saying what we were going to do as part of the meeting. So before we even started, she gave us a code so we could work it out. So first of all, we had to break the code. Then we had to decide what we were going to do. So we had to actually be prepared to be anything at the meeting. And strange as it may seem, it worked out. It was a really awesome meeting. And one of the speech givers was a gentleman who can make a joke out of anything. And he told us about his time in the Greek Isles that he'd had recently, and it was hilarious. So yes, going to Toastmasters, whether they're online or in the room, is my idea of going out for a jolly good time. And there's usually lots of laughter, lots of serious stuff, but there's also lots of laughter. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you very much. Actually, when you're talking about reading Braille, I was once told that Stevie Wonder picked up a cheese grater once and felt it and said, "This is the most violent book I've ever come across." Michelle, you live a bicultural life, I think might be a good way of putting it. From the wilds of Oregon and Sutherland, which is very much middle America, let's be honest, well, north, coastal America. And then you seem to spend an enormous amount of time back in the Philippines. How do you, because I imagine the sense of humor is different in both of those cultures. How do you deal with that bicultural life and maintaining the sense of humor for which you are so well noted?
That's so funny. That last line is so funny. The sense of humor for which you are so well noted. Oh my gosh. If you only were at a meeting I had about 3 hours ago, I delivered my project 4 from the humorous manual, which I have been postponing either consciously or unconsciously in Witty Storytellers. And in fact, Julie thinks I've already delivered it. I think maybe I have, maybe not. I have rehearsed it, but I'm not sure. So I finally decided I will just clear that question by delivering it in a club with just a handful of people who are not humorists. And so, well, so I did that. But responding to your question, I have been told that I have a sense of humor. The challenge is it doesn't show up when I want it to show up. I think my sense of humor takes after its owner. It is stubborn and it will not obey. So when I want to be humorous, I can't. But apparently, I just suddenly become humorous whenever. And I surprise myself because people suddenly laugh. And whether it is in the Philippines or in the United States, or in fact in Madrid, I wanted to answer that earlier question about just going for a crack. I went to Madrid. My Spanish is very limited. I attended Excelencia Toastmasters. They were doing bilingual, but they laughed at my jokes, I think, or maybe they were laughing at my Spanish. And I laughed with their jokes. And again, I really didn't quite understand everything, but I just watched the body language. So if they started laughing, I would start laughing as well. And so we just laughed. We had a great time. Oh, we also had tapas and red wine that really, really helped to have a crack. I think humor is like love or many other things in life. You cannot orchestrate or schedule it, except for people like Julie maybe. But for me, I cannot schedule humor. It will come when it wants to, and it will disappear the moment I want it to appear. Back to you, Graham.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you very much. Yes, having humour disappear the moment that you want it to appear, I suspect is something that all of us have done, especially anybody who's done that Manual 5, the entertaining speaker manual. Aniket, do you have a particular favourite joke or type of humour that you'd like to share with us? And if you've got a joke that you'd like to share, that's a good start. So, Aniket.
Why did a computer freeze? Because it had a virus.
Oh.
So, all right. So now when it comes to humor, I completely agree with the statement that it kind of eludes you when you want it to. I recently participated in an improv contest, and I must say I was not the most humorous one on the stage. But my other 2 participants were, and thankfully our team saved the second spot because of that. But it does say that when, and your question being, what's my kind of humor? I think my kind of humor is more on sarcasm and more subtle. So there is a lot of humor that I put in day-to-day conversations. And my friend, one of my friends yesterday commented, "Hey, why don't you try a stand-up comedy?" I said, "Yeah, right." I tried that. Didn't work very well, but I think a lot of speakers that I see on the stage, and they're extremely humorous. And I think when I write my speeches and I try to put in humor, Sometimes it works really well because I planned it. Sometimes I want to do it impromptu and it doesn't work. Maybe practice and learning from Julie would help. Learning from Michelle would help. Learning from you would help. So I think attending meetings like this and keeping good company, that's the real truth, or that's the real formula I'm working towards. Back to you.
Thank you, Aniket. Thank you. Carol, I haven't asked you a question, have I? No, I haven't. I want to ask you, who is your favorite comedian, or what is your favorite comedic television or movie or entertainment? So who is your favorite comedian, or what is your favorite style of comedy?
Thank you, Mr. Postmaster, with your table topics and your happy faces behind you. My favorite comedian, I'm actually married to him. He makes me laugh every day. And he has a peculiar, cryptic kind of humor that he slips into conversations at the moment you're least expecting it. And I'm always giving a quizzical look and then laughing. So I get used to his type of humor as we proceed through our it's more than 50 years of marital bliss. So his style of humor I can take. Some that I don't like, I just switch off. But some of the television shows that you are asking me about to name, I can't think of them right now, but I do know that particular genres of television appeal to me more than others. And I guess it's because I'm a Celtic that British humour in television appeals to me more than others do. And yes, Michelle, you did hear correctly, more than 50 years of marriage. I wanted to also tell you, Graham and Toastmasters, about what we were doing at our land-based clubs recently as a way of injecting humour into our meetings through table topics. And we decided to do Kris Kringle, which is give a little gift. And we enveloped it into a set of table topics around the Christmas theme. And this is my contribution. This is all about the reindeers. A blonde was asked recently in a contest, name 2 of the reindeers of Santa's sleigh. She very quickly replied, Rudolph and Olive. Wait a minute, we'll accept Rudolph, but Olive? She said, yes, you know. Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer had a very shiny nose, and if you ever saw it, you would even say it glows. Olive, the other reindeer. Boom.
Oh, that is bad, and I'm glad that you've only shared it with this group, because now I know what tomorrow's Dad Simba joke is going to be. I like that. Thank you very much, Carol. Thank you. All right, Federico, you're the only one who hasn't had a chance to speak. What have I got for you? Can you tell me about a humorous speech that you have seen that worked for you, or a humorous speech that you have seen that didn't work for you? Or perhaps one that you've delivered yourself.
I will say that this is maybe the most difficult question for me, since I consider myself humorless, I would say. I'm not a very humorous person, and generally it's really hard, even when I go to the stand-up comedies, that someone make me laugh. I'm not very experienced in this. But let's say that we have a colleague in the Toastmasters here in Poland that she can make jokes of anything that you can imagine. You can give her an USB and she will start making thousands of jokes of this. You can give her a paper towel and she will make jokes of that thing. And something that I remember very well is that she was telling us a very, very creepy story, in fact, that she had cancer. No one of us was aware of that. And her story was about Mr. Hope and Mrs. Faith, is how she called her imaginary friends. And she was explaining that despite that you had these kind of imaginary friends, and she had survived the cancer. Mrs. Hope was able to provide her with the energies for going out of that place that she could have died. But she was able to deliver the story about her cancer and about those imaginary friends in a very humorous way, despite that it's not a very nice story. I'm very surprised if you listen to her when you come for sure to Paris in the next 2 years. You will be surprised about all the stories that she will say, despite that it can be very creepy. She will be able to provide you with a lot of crazy stories that are very humorous, and you will say, how? But that's the only thing that I can say. I'm a humorless person.
Well, I don't know that I would call you humorless, but I have to say that is a very touching story, and I thank you, Federica. In fact, it reminds me of that quote that I read you from Robert Heinlein before. They laugh because it hurts, because it's the only thing that will make it stop hurting. Sometimes that's what humor is about, but sometimes humor is about life and sharing it one way or the other. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you so much, Mr. Table Topics Master. That was interesting and fun. We're going to do the evaluations now. The first evaluator of Carol's speech is Julie, and she will be followed up by the next evaluator, and that is Jeannie. So please welcome our first evaluator, Julie, who is going to give her evaluation on Carol's speech, Instructional Designer as opposed to Professional Speaker. Welcome, Julie.
Before I begin to evaluate, it was Anniket who was supposed to be the evaluator, and I would like to ask Anniket if he prepared to evaluate Carol, because I think he wrote all the time while Carol spoke, so yeah. I would like to offer him the evaluation.
Good. Welcome, Anniket.
Yes, I did prepare the evaluation. All right. Carol, I think it was a really great speech, to say the least. When you started with a question of talking for a longer duration, that connected with me very well, because a lot of times I also felt that so many times we speak for 5 to 7 minutes. It feels like our capacity for speaking kind of is limited to that. And when it comes to speaking longer time, you need more practice and more planning. Now, there are a lot of points that are connected really well with your speech, and I love them. Starting with the stories that you weaved in your speech, because stories, great stories happen to those who can tell them. And I think the 3 great stories that you spoke today, you told about your story, about speaking to the 12 bank managers. I love the call of the 4 things that Toastmasters teaches you, because when you put a number in front of something, that 3 things I'm going to tell you, 3 stories of 4 things that Toastmasters will teach you, that stays in your memory for a longer time. So leading the meeting, speaking impromptu and effective evaluations, amazing way to sum it up. And the power of 3 that you use